Welcome to Your College Bound Kid,
a podcast for parents, college counselors, students, and anyone who wants a weekly deep dive into the world of college admissions.
My name is Julia. I was an admission officer at Haverford College, an outside reader for Emory University, and I currently work as a school-based counselor at a school in Massachusetts.
I'm Lisa, and I'm a clinical psychologist and college counselor. I have a daughter in college, a daughter in high school, and a son in middle school. After 30 years in Chicago, we recently moved to North Carolina.
My name is Mark. I'm a college coach in Atlanta and the parent of two daughters. Karis, a graduate of Davidson College, and she is the founder of the Spanish tutoring company, SpanishHelpToday.com. And Joy is a wellness coach at the Keenan Flagler Business School at the University of North Carolina in Chapel Hill. And I'm so blessed to be able to work alongside both my beautiful daughters at School Match for You, college counseling firm that I founded in 2010. This week in the news, Hilary will take a question from a listener. And then you spoke up and we heard you. We are having up one of our panel discussions. Again, our roundtable discussions, I should say. And it is with Julia, Susan, and me. And we're talking about something that's not known very well. It's the secondary school report, also known as the school report. It's what your school counselor sends to colleges that they incorporate in their evaluation of the file. Not very much is known about it. And so over the next 3 weeks, Julia, Susan, and I are going to break it down. And then we'll have the final segment of my interview with Dr. Ramon Blakley. And we're talking about University of Texas at Austin. I have to give Ramon a lot of credit, because I asked some really tough questions in this segment, and most people wouldn't have actually answered those questions, to be really honest with you. So you got to give him a lot of credit for doing that. I don't want to just give you guys softball interviews. I don't think that's very helpful. I don't think you want to come on and just feel like it's a puff piece or like, you know, it's an infomercial for a college to just get up and spin you. And so that's not really what we're trying to do. We're trying to provide information. We're also trying to ask the tough questions. And I feel like I do that in this interview. And I give them a lot of credit for answering questions that, you know, I was talking with Julia. She was like, 99% of admission officers would not answer those questions. So I give Raymond all the credit in the world. Friends, before we get into today's episode, I just want to remind you about a couple important events we have coming up. The first is the webinar with Torito Leonardo and Chris Leonardo. These are two attorneys, very different attorneys, and over the years they have really enjoyed talking to students about law and law careers. And I've gotten to know Torito and Chris, and they're very transparent, they're very humble. I think you're really going to enjoy it, students, if you sign up for this. So if you're interested, that is now just 10 days away. That is Sunday, September 14th from 7 to 8 Eastern time, 6 to 7 Central, 5 to 6 Mountain, and 4 to 5 Pacific time. 10 days away. So you just go to yourcollegeboundkid.com and go to the resources tab, and you can't miss it. You'll see the sign up form right there for that. The other thing I want to remind you about is our case studies. I've never been more excited about anything really than these case studies as far as helping you to understand how the sausage is made, how colleges make decisions. But Hilary and I were talking, she had a great idea. So originally I said, go to yourcollegeboundkid.com, go to the resources tab. You'll see the case studies. When you click the link, it'll take you into a Google form, and then you'll see another link that's going to take you outside of that Google form where you'll be able to read the applications of the three students. And I said, read everything, come back and select the student you want to admit, the one you want to waitlist, the one you want to deny. And then for 4 successive weeks, we're going to play the discussion from our 3 admission officers and our parents who form an admissions committee discussing these students. But Harry had a good point, and it was this. Parents' opinions on who to admit will likely be influenced by the discussions around the committee. So what we're actually recommending, and it's okay if you've already gone ahead and voted, that's not a big deal. You can do it that way as well. But if you haven't, here's what we're recommending. Same thing, right? Go to yourcollegeboundkid.com, resources tab, case studies, read the entire files, but then listen to the discussions, because we're having an entire episode on each of the 3 students. So you can hear the discussions of each of the 3 students. And then you may want to go vote after you've had the input from our committee. So you can do it either way. We just wanted to provide another option for you. But this is what we think is the best learning opportunity that we have provided. And so we really hope you take advantage of it. You're going to get so much more out of that podcast series if you actually read the files. All right, let's transition to our episode.
And now it's time for Hot Topics in the News.
Hey, Hilary.
Hey, how are you, Mark?
Good. I reached out to both Hilary and Julia, and it's something that I've actually been talking to Julia about for a while, but I wanted to get Hilary's take on it as well. Every year I'll have 2 or 3 students that will want to do I'd say 2 most years, want to do the personal statement on an eating disorder. And Hilary and I had a really good conversation about this. Julia and I had a really good conversation about this. And I thought you'd be interested in sort of the perspective from an admission office on that topic. So that's what we're going to talk about today. So why don't you start out, Hilary, and take it where you want to go?
Yeah, I would say I get a handful of essays every year that are focused on a student's eating disorder. And gosh, they're hard to read, right? It's usually not, this is not a topic that you can talk about lightly or with a lot of joy. And so they're heavy essays to read. So I guess I would say approach this topic with care and thoughtfully. And I think one thing that I say to students all the time is that you don't have to have overcome some terrible thing in order to be admitted to a highly selective college. And that's true not just at CC, that's true everywhere in America. And so if you're leaning on your eating disorder because you feel like it's the only thing that you have overcome that's going to like make somebody like, I don't know, overwhelm us with emotions, just know that you don't have to do that. So we admit students every year who struggle with eating disorders. Sometimes we know that they're struggling or have struggled with an eating disorder when we admit them, and sometimes we don't. And one thing that I know for sure is that an eating disorder, while you may go through treatment for it in high school, it may be in your rearview mirror, but it's never going to disappear, right? This is something that you will continue to think about and maybe relapse and maybe continue to struggle with later on. Maybe it doesn't show up again until you're 50 years old. I don't know if any of you are fans of Glennon Doyle. She's a writer, and she struggled with an eating disorder throughout her teens and into her 20s. And then she received treatment, was managing okay. And then in her 50s, it really came back up, right? So there are lots of people who will struggle at an early age, be able to put it behind them, and then struggle again. Like it's not something that ever completely goes away. And I think knowing that, we would never not admit a student because they've told us that they have an eating disorder. And also, we know that we want to make sure that we have resources available to support you. CC is a place that does have the resources available to support you, which is why we feel okay about admitting students who have struggled with eating disorders. But I can't tell you for sure that that's going to be true at every institution. And so I think I would approach with care and caution and really try to take a step back from the eating disorder sort of narrative and look at your life as a whole and see what other places are there in your life where you can show us that you're able to do hard things, that you are able to deal with struggle and come out on top, or places that you're able to find joy, places that you have, where you've grown because of something tough or because of something fun and exciting. And I think we at CC believe very strongly that every human being is multifaceted. We do not ever read an application and say this person is flat. We are, in fact, strictly not allowed to do that because people are multifaceted, because people contain multitudes. And so what I would encourage students who have struggled with an eating disorder to do is to look at their life and see where those other multitudes are. And if you feel like there is something else that you can highlight, I think of an eating disorder as sort of a low light from our lives, right? If there's something that you can highlight that shows us the kind of student you're going to be in our community, that not that you have to move in that direction, but that you should give it a fair shot.
Yeah. I mean, this is a really complex topic. I would never say never. I had a student write on this, and the student ended up, getting in a couple schools that I wouldn't have thought they would have got in. But I would say I'm only going to be comfortable with it probably once out of every 10 years, to be honest. Most of the time, it is not going to be your best way to go. In this particular case, the student felt so strongly about this, and she'd gotten involved and was president of the club and blah, blah, blah. All, like, this was such a part of her identity.
Yeah.
She
in
was
that case,
literally,
you can't not talk about it,
yes,
right? When it becomes who you are.
Yes.
And that's totally fine. When there are students who are advocating for other students who have eating disorders and getting involved in that community in ways that they're supporting other students, like, that's amazing, and is showing me that you have such a good handle on it, that you're going to have the support systems around you, whether they're from our institution or not, to help you manage. And you're making a positive impact on your community through it. I think that sort of, I always go back to when you had the, I think it was the director of admission from Barnard on, and she was talking
Christina
about
Lopez.
Yeah, Christina Lopez. And she was talking about like discussing challenging things. I think she might
mental
have
health related.
Been speaking about mental health issues. And the thing that has stuck with me from that interview is how she talked about you want to talk about these things if you're a phoenix who's already risen from the ashes, or you're rising from the ashes, right? If you're still in the ashes, you're not ready to talk about it yet. And so I like to use that framework and apply it to any things that a student has dealt with that are really hard. It could be a parent's divorce. It could be a really tough injury. It could be mental health. It could be an eating disorder. Like, all of these things, I think, fall into that category of like, where are you in your Phoenix era right now, right? Like, are you still in the ashes, or are you rising above? Are you very far above the ashes and can look down from way up in the sky, right? Like, those are the moments when you're able to really put it in perspective and show that not that you've moved on, but that you have the supports in place and the strategies that you need to sort of manage that hard thing.
Yeah, Christina said several things in that interview. One of the things she said, in there, was, I do like essays that let me see the prism through which you see the world. She did say that. She also said, we are not your therapist, and you should not feel like you are obligated to have to tell us everything in your private journey.
And you don't have to do that to be admitted. I think that's the part that I push back so much with students about, because my own daughter's friends have said, like, if I wasn't homeless, like living in a car by myself in high school, I'm not going to get into a highly selective school. And like, that is just not true.
Right.
But there are so many students who really think, like, if I'm just like suburban white kid, like, I can't get in anywhere. And it's not actually how college admission works. And so that's where I say, like, don't lean on this thing because you feel like you have to. It's different if it's part of your identity and it's part of advocacy work that you're doing in service and leadership and all of that, then it's unavoidable, and you should talk about it because it's taught you really positive things. It's brought out really positive characteristics in who you are.
Julie and I were texting about this probably 10 days or so ago, and I said to her, Julia, eating disorder, absolutely no for the personal statement, or it depends on the circumstance. And she's like, 99% of the time, that's not going to be your best way to go. And that's really where I come down on it. Like, like, I know I shared a situation, but that's going to be incredibly rare.
Yep.
One of the reasons is what you said, like, show what brings us joy. And a lot of times those are very heavy, and your joy doesn't always come through. That's one. There is another component, which So when I did boarding school admissions, we were smaller, right? We only brought 120 kids in residentially every year, and we had a pretty big staff for that, so we could really take a lot of time on each kid. So if anybody actually had seen a psychologist in the last 2 years,
Hmm.
we required like their psychologist or their psychiatrist to fill out a whole detailed,
Wow.
yeah, 2-page form, and then it went to like a specialist on our end that interpreted it.
Hmm.
So there are a lot of people that had either eating disorders or cutting incidents or things like
Hmm.
that. And so then that would go to our specialist who would review it, and then that person would come to big committee
Hmm.
and present. And I would say like probably about 50% of the time the verdict would be this is risky.
Hmm.
This is risky, like where they're at right now and that whole
Hmm.
that whole rise from the ashes, overcoming it.
Yeah.
So that's partly me, but it does create a little bit of a bias. And I'm not
Yeah.
the only one that has the bias of, colleges can be really concerned if they've had incidents in dorms
Mm.
that have led to, whether it's, suicides or
Hmm.
attempted suicides or it's spread to other
Hmm.
people.
Hmm.
And so there are people that are going to be concerned about that. Like,
Hmm.
Jill will say a lot of times people will say off the air to her, like, please don't tell your students to do that because
Hmm.
it's not gonna read well over here. I can't say that, on the
Yeah.
record because then it looks like you're discriminating.
Right.
But I do feel the need to say this. Like this, there is that other voice out there, which is we're
Hmm.
concerned. Part of it you addressed when you said, "Do we have the staff?"
Hmm.
That's part of it, but there's also just the concern
Of
of
how it impacts the rest of the students.
yeah, and not just how it impacts the rest of the students, but also what liability could we potentially be setting ourselves up
Yeah.
for.
Totally.
Like I do feel the need to tell our listeners like there's a concern out there like that, and
Yeah.
you never know if you're writing into that context.
Yeah.
And I just think I feel like I wouldn't be being really genuine and transparent to not tell our listeners that and this is especially true when schools are coming off of incidents in the past. In fact, I
Hmm.
don't know if you remember this, Hillary. It was a few years ago, but there was some stuff that was going on. It was before my daughter started working there at UNC Chapel Hill
Hmm.
related to some of this stuff, and we did a
Hmm.
segment on it. And literally, we just never know who's listening. One of our
Yeah.
listeners used to be very high up over there and reached out to sort of give the behind the scenes
Hmm.
perspective. And this was the behind the scenes perspective of people are so afraid of lawsuits.
Yeah.
And a lot of times that's reactionary compared to what has happened in the past,
Hmm.
and so that's another reason why I tend to be leery. You just never know.
Yeah.
And that also can apply to other things too. Like sometimes people have had severe depression and they've been hospitalized,
Hmm.
and they write about their, being hospitalized,
Yeah.
and it can also potentially trigger the same kinds of
Yep.
concerns. And so
Yep.
I just think that my view is that it's risky, and most of the time it's a risk not worth taking.
Yeah. And
Do
I
do you
think
agree
there's
with that?
also, I do,
Mhm.
I mean, that hasn't really been my experience at CC, but I can totally see how that could come up in lots of situations at other institutions. I also think there's a difference between writing about something like this for your essay versus mentioning it in a bullet in your additional information section, right? Like
Mhm.
if you were in an inpatient
That's an important point.
situation,
Yeah.
yeah, and that affected your grades or even didn't affect your grades, like maybe
Hmm.
you somehow still managed to be getting straight A's through that, like that's pretty impressive. But in most cases, that's not the situation, right? And we're going
Hmm.
to see an incomplete or we're going to see lower grades. And then I think it's appropriate to say in a bullet, look, I was dealing with this thing and I was in inpatient care. I was in, really intense outpatient care and couldn't be at school every day. But you're able to write about something that's not about that component of your life. That gives us more confidence, I guess, that you have really like gotten to a place where you're managing this well, because you mention it, but it hasn't become all of who you are. You don't feel the need to use this as your therapist. And like, I get to see some other perspective on you that's really positive in all aspects versus like a negative turning into a positive. That can be, I think, a more maybe compelling way to go about it. I'm not saying don't share this with us, but I am saying like, it's not the most maybe compelling way to think about your application. And so if you want it to be part of your application, maybe it shows up in the counselor letter, maybe it shows up in the additional information section, but you sort of leave that space in your essay to tell us about other parts of who you are and how you became who you are.
No, I totally agree with that. Normally, if it's going to come up, those are better places for it, either one of those two that you said. I was almost hesitant to say this, what I said, because I don't want to make it sound like kids need to be perfect, and they can't have, and
they do not need to be perfect.
Yeah, and they can't have setbacks and stub their toe and fall hard. And so sometimes when I said what I said, I hope that's not how it's received, because that's certainly not true. And in fact,
absolutely,
there are a lot of times in when an admission officer can be impressed with what somebody's overcome and felt like, wow, absolutely, I see so much resilience there.
Yes.
Like, that's going to serve you well, because 4 years at our place, you're going to have some storm. Maybe it's health, maybe it's roommate, maybe it's academic.
I think the challenge is when that becomes a formula, right, for students, and they feel like they have to be able to show that they've overcome some hard thing, and you don't have to.
Yeah. Yeah. It's so funny. I don't know why I never thought about this, Hilary. I don't know why I never connected the dots, but probably one of the reasons why I get a couple every year is because of the mindset that I need to show I overcame something. That's probably what's driving it. I
do feel like students mind their lives in that way to try to find where's something that I've overcome something really hard, because that's a narrative that lots of students encounter. And so they try to find the thing that's going to fit that box for them or check that box for them.
Now, I know one thing. I find it very hard to have this conversation with students sometimes, because sometimes there is a lot of pride at how far they've come, and they're kind of really I know there should be, but they're really excited to want to make it a focal point of the application.
And you know what, I mean, I think that there's a way that you can do that, right? It's just hard, which is why I think I always say for students to approach this with care and caution, because it takes a lot of skill in writing to be able to write an essay that focuses on your resilience, not on the part where you were like beaten down, right? And that, like, it's not going to happen with your first or second or maybe even your third draft of an essay. It is almost like in that situation, the story of the mental health disorder, the eating disorder, whatever, is sort of secondary to the story of this incredible person who you've become because of it. But it's so hard to write that well. It's easy to write it where you sort of get dragged into the story of the hardship and in the disorder, and the light at the end of the tunnel that you're coming into or have come through is only a little bit at the end of the essay. I think that's why I push back on it a lot, is because what I tend to see is the dwelling in the hard place and the not so much about the, we say this about all essays. This isn't about essays that have to do with eating disorders or other challenges, but it's the so what that matters to us, right? And so, like, I guess my advice to a student would be that if you are intent on writing about a challenge like this in your essay, that it's like 10% of the essay, and the other 90% is about the what's happened after the recovery. And in that way, it sort of almost becomes an aside. And I think it's really hard to have that perspective as a person who's gone through something really tough in the last couple of years, right? That's a perspective you get much, much further down the line, and takes a lot of maturity and reflection to be able to write about it in that way at that point in your life.
I'm not sure what you see on your end, Hilary, because you're seeing such a wide range of people that have somebody helping them a lot and people on their own. But I know for me, for like first drafts, like
Mhm.
more than half of students take too long to get to the so what.
Yes.
Either they take
Yes.
too long,
Yes. Or
their
they never
story,
get there.
or they never get there.
Yeah.
More than
Yep.
half.
Yep.
Yeah. So
Yeah. I mean, it's the
yeah,
same thing that we say about like, don't write a whole essay about your grandparent who you admire,
sure,
right? Like
same
a
thing.
little bit should be about your grandparent, but most
Yeah.
of it should be about why you're a different person because of that, because of what you've learned from them. Show me
Hmm.
examples of what you've learned from that person. I just was working with a student who had a montage structure essay where they were going through the different ways that they've been inspired or learned from coaches who they've had in their lives, and it gave me a really good sense um, of who the inspirational people were in their lives and the experiences they've had that inspired them. But I did not get a sense for what they did with that inspiration, right? And so I was trying to encourage the student to flip the script on each of those different sections of their essay. Like, okay, so your soccer coach inspired you when they did this thing on the field with you. One of them was their coach, like the coach's eyes lit up every time that they saw this student. And I was like, okay, I don't want to hear all about the coach's eyes lighting up. I want to hear about then how your eyes lit up when you ran into, one of the younger students on your soccer team at the grocery store, and the experience of getting to put into practice what you learned from that coach rather than telling me about the coach. And I think that's where students miss it a lot, is that they tell us about the experience that they have that was put onto them rather than the experience of offering that amazing personality trait or skill or whatever to someone else. And I think that that really ties into what we're talking about here. It's just hard to write about something tough without dwelling on the tough thing. I want you to tell me about what came after it. And to do that, I don't need to know the entire story of how you walked through this really hard thing.
Now, what are your thoughts of someone referring to like attempted suicide and things like that? Do you group these two together, or do you see that as a differentiator in terms of you're going to freak out some admission offices, you've introduced a flag, and now you've made yourself look risky, and
Yeah.
it's not going to help you?
Yeah. Again, like I just think it's really hard to do well.
Hmm.
It would not be my first choice of an essay topic. I mean, think about how young these kids are, right?
Hmm.
They're 17 years old, maybe
Hmm.
18 when they're filling out their application, and suicide attempts don't happen when you're 3 years old, right? Like they happen when you're 13, 14, 15. So this is recent. It's it's within the last couple of years that a student has experienced that. And when I think about how different a student is going to be 20 years post suicide attempt versus 2 years post suicide attempt, and how much more perspective they'll have on it 20 years down the road, that's the time to write about it. Not when you're they may think that they've gotten through it and that they've recovered, but I think any parent will tell you that you're still worried about that kid for
Sure.
probably the rest of your life, right? And so I mean, it's not that we won't admit students who have that in their background. It's just hard to make a compelling case for yourself if that's what you're focused on.
I also think just in general, from just, talking with you a lot, I think that you guys may be more gracious than some people in
I'm
terms
sure
of
that we are.
in
I'm
terms
sure
of
that
how
we
you
are just,
approach things.
yeah,
Yeah.
because again, like it's that no student is flat. Every student is
Hmm.
multifaceted.
Hmm.
Students contain multitudes. Like we really believe that about
Yeah.
students, and we have the luxury of being able to take the time to look deeply into a student's story, and not everyone has that.
Because I can't think of a time when I would not stop a student if they start trying to go there.
Yeah, I
Um,
would if I were
yeah,
counseling students, I
yeah,
would also.
yeah. It's probably on my mind because I did that recently.
Yeah. I
And
think
it's
from my
something that
perspective as an
every other
admission
year.
officer, I
Hmm.
wouldn't lay down that law because
Hmm.
because I want students to be able to tell me about who they are. But I think if I were working in your role, I I would be extra cautious about it, and I would just be telling students there are a million amazing things about you. Why dwell on this one thing that is really hard and nuanced, and you need more than you need a book. You don't need 650 words, right? To explain it. You need multiple chapters.
Yeah. Have you ever has there been any suicides at CC since you've been there?
Yeah, I think we've had one on campus since I've been
Hmm.
here, and a couple that happened like over the summers, not
Hmm.
on campus.
Hmm.
Students were at home.
I only brought that up because we had one,
Hmm.
it really
Yeah,
rocks you.
yeah. It
You
was a
know, it,
few years ago.
yeah, it really
It
rocks
was
you.
really hard. I think part of it was we were just coming out of COVID at that
Hmm.
point, and so
Hmm.
everyone was sort of on
Hmm.
edge.
Hmm.
And so I think it was maybe even more impactful because everyone was so worried about our students,
Yeah.
and it just felt like, oh, like we were just digging ourselves out of this COVID hole, and we lost a student. That's
Yeah,
hard.
for us, this student had been at our school for 3 weeks, so brand new
Wow.
student, three
Wow.
weeks, and yeah, it's a lot. There's a context that you're
Hmm.
speaking into, right?
Hmm.
And it's just things to think about. Well, I'm glad we
Hmm.
were able to talk about the real issues here, Hillary, and grapple with
Yeah,
them. We don't always have all the answers, but hopefully we can at least point people in the right direction and at least the questions they should be asking. This
yeah,
is a tough conversation, but I also
it
feel it
is.
will probably be helpful to a lot of people to kind of hear
I hope so.
hear
I'm not
hear
a
perspectives.
counselor.
Hmm.
I don't know the right things, right? This isn't my background. I can just tell you about what I see when I'm reading essays, which is such a small part of the fuller picture, but hopefully it's helpful.
Yeah, but I want to close with what Christina Lopez said. Like, we're not your therapist.
Yes.
It's not your obligation to tell us everything.
Hmm.
Like, some things should be between you and your therapist.
Yeah.
And you should feel like don't feel like you're not being authentic if that's where you want to
Yes.
keep if that's where you want to keep certain
Yes.
things. And so
Yes,
that's where I'd
absolutely.
like to
Because you don't
close with
tell us
that.
everything in any respect, right? You
Yeah.
also don't tell us like what you ate for breakfast yesterday morning, and that's fine.
Yeah.
Like there are
Yeah.
big things and little things that
Sure.
are part of your identity that there's not room in the college application to share every single piece of who you are. And it's okay to pick and choose which things you share with us.
Thanks for being so generous with your time. I mean, our listeners love you, and I always love talking with you. And I know that this is a busy time for you.
Mark,
Getting
when's it not a busy time in college admission?
that's
That's the
true.
question I would like
That's
someone to
true.
answer.
That's true. That's true.
They tell you it's cyclical, but it's not.
I think it's a little. I think maybe like middle of June to start of August is
Supposed to be. Not if
is.
you work in comms. My
That's
not
true.
busy time is
Yeah.
from like December 20th to January 5th because
Okay.
we
Two
get
weeks.
off of work for
That's
that
true.
time,
Yeah.
and we are encouraged not to open our computer or to like we're
Hmm.
encouraged to take all of our work apps off of our phone. Like we really are told to unplug during that time, and I love that. I don't think that's true at every school, but it's true in our office, and it's really nice to have that time off. So
No, but in comms, you gotta think about all this new stuff coming out to get ready for the next year.
yeah, well,
But
we use the quote unquote slow time
yes.
to do all of our other projects. So then that's no longer a slow time.
Well, I'll tell you, there've been many people over the year that I've got admissions interviews by like suggesting that time. You
Mm,
know,
yeah,
suggesting that time. Like you've made
yeah,
it through May 1, you've got your class.
yeah,
You're not ready yet to come back, and they're like, yeah, that's gonna be the best time.
yeah.
Super
That makes
busy
sense.
people. So awesome. All right.
All
See
right.
ya. Take
Thanks,
care.
Mark.
Thanks.
See ya.
Thank you. Well, friends, hopefully you enjoyed that conversation that Hillary and I had. Now going to transition to the fourth of sixth article that I'm reading about the money problem that colleges are facing. So if you're a regular listener, you know that for the last month or so, I've been focusing on an article that ran in Inside Higher Ed. And the article I consider one of the most important ones in a while. It's called The Money Problem No College Can Escape. And it's 6 views on how higher ed's business model is cracking and what to do about it. So you've heard me say I've never been more concerned in anything in higher ed than the financial challenges and problems that higher ed is encountering right now. In fact, Vince and I just recorded an In the News segment on that you'll be hearing next week. And what they did was they took 6 completely different perspectives. They ran July 23rd, 2025. And so far we've read them. We talked to Chris Gardner at Wofford College, Chief Financial Officer. We read you his perspective. Also read you Francis Fusterstenberg, a professor at Johns Hopkins, the scathing denunciation of what's happening. And then we also read almost the opposite view. It's called It's Not All About Politics by Gary Stocker. And he's a founder of College Viability LLC. So I really love the one we're going to read this week. It's by Ruth Johnson. And Ruth is the vice president for consulting at NACUBO. Now, NACUBO is the National Association for College and University Business Officers. So you often heard us talk about NACAC. NACAC is like our organization for support for colleges, admission officers, and college counselors. So I know NACAC's confusing because we're talking about the NACAC admission survey, and we're talking about the NACAC fair, and NACAC this, and NACAC that, but it is an organization. So NACUBO is for business officers what NACAC is for admission officers and college counselors. Support, education, professional development, guidance. And this is a powerful article that comes from the Vice President for Consulting. Once again, Ruth Johnson. I'm going to read it to you. It's short, but it's powerful. And she calls her article, and I think this is a great name for it, A Sobering New Reality. We could have been better prepared for the challenges we face. We knew the demographic cliff was coming. We knew that state support was eroding. We knew that COVID relief funding would eventually disappear. And we knew that the public perception of higher education's value was dropping. The sector's new reality is sobering, and it requires action. We must unite to advocate with a stronger, amplified, and coordinated voice. We must collaborate to generate fresh, actionable ideas. We must realign our strategic plans, mission statements, and institutional values. Our focus must remain on our students and what they need to succeed in a changing world. Institutions I consult with, so she's like the chief consulting. She's VP, but she does a lot of consulting, for NACUBO. So here's what she says. Institutions I consult with are taking action. Some of the measures they are taking include. Now, friends, I want you to listen to this because Ruth Johnson gives a very long list of actions that colleges are taking. And this is cutting edge stuff. This is what they're doing to address their financial woes. So here's the long list. Exploring new revenue models, increasing online offerings, pursuing cost reductions, pausing the hiring of non-critical positions, limiting travel, reducing their physical footprints, conducting cost of instruction exercises to understand the revenue and expenses of academic programs, improving processes to reduce waste and reduce bureaucracy in operations, examining the cost of athletics, including the number of teams and the number of scholarships offered, using reserves or foundation funds to bridge activities that must be conducted. And the last one, she says, working with peers and city and state agencies to reduce purchasing costs and to offer shared services or courses. Then she says this, looking ahead, I envision a higher education system that is by necessity. Now, I want you to really listen to this because I really think she's painting the picture of what higher ed's going to look like over the next 30, 40 years. Let me say that again. Looking ahead, I envision a higher education system that is by necessity more streamlined, more flexible, more accessible. There will be fewer institutions, but they will be better connected and allow students to move more easily between campuses and platforms as they learn and increase their skills through their lives. The system will be more responsive to workforce needs and better aligned with local, state, and national priorities. Students will gain meaningful work experience while earning degrees that lead directly to careers. And research will be conducted in collaboration with peers, industry, government, and international partners. We are in challenging times, but we have weathered challenges before. By doing the strategic work needed now, colleges can emerge from the current circumstances stronger and able to thrive. Ruth Johnson, VP for Consulting at NACUBU, the National Association for College and University Business Officers. All right, friends, we're going to transition to our roundtable. It's been over a year since we've had a roundtable, and we're talking about the secondary school report. So I hope you'll find it interesting as we transition to part 1 of 3 for our interview for today.
And now it's time for a question from one of our listeners.
Friends, over the next 3 weeks, you're going to hear a roundtable discussion about something that's really pretty important, but seldom talked about and often misunderstood. And it's the secondary school report, often called just the school report that high school counselors can fill out and send off to colleges with the applications. And so in part 1, Susan gives a detailed description of what the secondary school report is. And then Julia, Hilary, and Susan talk about how colleges use the secondary school report when reading a file. Listen and enjoy. Friends, I'm here with our established panel. It's been about a year and a half since we did our last big panel where we looked at both activities. We did one, and then we did another one for honors. So I'll let each person say their name so they know who's on our panel today. Want to start with you, top left corner?
Yeah, is that me? I don't know. We're all in different orders on everybody's screen. This is Hilary.
Susan Tree.
And Julia Esquivel.
Awesome. Well, we're going to talk about something I think it's exciting. It's the secondary school report. Some people just call it the school report. I get excited about things I think that sometimes people may not know, and we're providing hopefully some knowledge that people may not know. There's a lot of talk about personal statement and activities and testing sections and other sections of the application, but this is a section I find there's not that well known that can be very important. So I've asked Susan to just give an overview of it, and then we're going to get into talking about, as a reader, when you're reading, what are some things on the secondary school report that are very noteworthy and can sometimes be influential in a reader rating. So Susan, take it away.
Sure. Well, and I think this is an interesting look into the weeds of the application because, those of us who've been readers know that all this gets kind of translated to the colleges through a platform called Slate, which maybe Hilary can talk about a little bit, but I know listeners have heard us talk about that over the episodes. But what I'm going to do is just let listeners know a little bit of what is included in this. I refer to it as a document, but of course it's all digitalized. But I go back to reading applications on paper. Julia, you can't see her, but Julia's nodding. But now the digital presentation of the application is very well organized and very uniform. Readers always see the documents in the same order across applications, which allows readers to be more efficient and find information in the folder, which is important. But so the secondary, the school report, and we're talking about the common application here, has a number of different forms in it. The large document, which a lot of schools call the SSR, the secondary school report form, really gives the student a chance to request from their school all the information that is needed by a college in the evaluation process. So when a student fills out the common application, in the recommenders and FERPA section, they check a box that says they authorize their high school to give all this information to the colleges to which they're applying. They have to do that. Nothing can go until the student has signed that authorization. The second half of the authorization refers to the Family Educational Rights and Privacy Act, which is related to the confidentiality of recommendations. And I think we're probably not going to go there today, but a lot of students don't realize that they actually have to authorize. Now, a lot of high schools use a middleman platform, a middle person platform, to deal with their students' transcripts and other documents. The most common is Naviance. Some of us lived with Naviance for many, many years in our schools, sadly, although it has improved. And the other very popular one right now is called SCOIR, SCOIR. Many schools and school systems, high schools, buy these platforms to provide an ease of collecting recommendations, giving their students exercises to prepare for the application process, and then transmit documents to colleges. So parents, if you hear kids referring to, oh, we use Naviance, we use SCOIR, that's what they're talking about. So these two platforms, and they are commercial products, serve as an in-between, a go-between student, counselor, and college. Now, these two, Naviance and SCOIR, are synchronized in an official way with the Common Application. I believe that with the coalition, only SCOIR is synchronized, but don't quote me on that. I think that's true. Mm-hmm. SCOIR is coming in to a synchronization just now as we speak with Common App. So welcome to the world. These two platforms mean that students will basically use those platforms to communicate with their counselor about where they're applying, and with their teachers. Everything gets uploaded and sent kind of in that way. So enough of that. But if your kids are at schools that use other platforms, and the common ones are Maya Learning mm-hmm. and Cialfo mm-hmm. and School Links, mm-hmm. Parchment. I know there are others.
Zello.
Zello, thank you. Mm-hmm. These are out there as well. They are not synchronized with the actual application platforms, but they are still the way that schools collect and transmit documents. So in those cases, the student actually uses the Common Application platform to manage their transcripts and recommendations. So in the Common App school report form, you find, either as a student or as a college admissions reader, a data gathering section called the school report, which includes a lot of information about the school as well as about the student. And the reason why it's in there is a lot of high schools don't have profiles. Colleges love good high school profiles. And these are documents that are always sent with the transcript to explain the context, the student population, the community, the curriculum, and any policies that the school has. Very, very important to a reader. And I know Hilary will probably talk about that in a minute. But a lot of high schools simply don't have helpful profiles, which is too bad, because as a reader, I can tell you, and I'm sure my friends here would agree, that this can be harmful to an applicant, where it just doesn't enhance the legibility and understandability of the application. The school report form summarizes the data that the colleges will need. So there you go. It also allows a counselor to give ratings if they are inclined to do that. A lot of counselors don't. They prefer to do a narrative addition to the school report form, which is called the counselor recommendation, which is a narrative evaluation, but it truly is less of an evaluation and more of a description. So this isn't how much your student has cozied up to their high school counselor, who may have 400 other seniors. You know, a lot of kids don't know their counselors and vice versa, but the evaluation by the counselor is an opportunity to provide a little personal insight on behalf of the school. The profile is part of the school report form if a school has one, and I certainly recommend that all seniors and parents request a copy of that if it's not on the website, and review it. so they know how the high school is communicating itself to the colleges to see if there's any information that needs to be added in there. So basically, the last piece of the school report is the transcript. And transcripts vary widely. There is no national or international standard of format. There are certainly best practices out there, but really every school and school system kind of does its own thing when it comes to transcripts and what goes on. Is it quarters, semesters, year? Is it, what kind of grading system? Is there a GPA calculated? It just can be a total, kind of circus of information and how it's portrayed. But as we all know on our end, we are accustomed to this as readers of applications, and we know how to immediately assess whatever data is presented on a transcript. There are a couple other parts of the school report form that kids never interact with, but they are there for the use by the school. One is the optional report, which is sent usually with a interim or early transcript. There is the mid-year report, which is sent with the mid-year official transcript, often in January. And there's a final report where the high school is responsible for sending a final transcript that certifies graduation to the college where the student has indicated that they will enroll. There's also a homeschool supplement and an international supplement. So as readers, we see those pop up from time to time in applications when schools are using them to convey information about their students. So that's the race through all the parts of the school report form. Teacher recommendations aren't generally considered part of the school report per se, because they are authored and transmitted by the teachers or the people outside the school who may have been invited through the other recommendation system. But in a lot of these platforms that I referred to, they are part of the bundle. So there you go.
Transition. Yeah, let's transition and talk about, as a reader, what are some things that are in the school report. I'm just going to say school report, it's easier. And sometimes people call it the school report, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, you'll hear that. So what are some things, Julia, Hilary, that when you're reading a file, you say, oh, that's significant? Why don't we start with things maybe you're going to always look at for sure? And Hilary, you want to start with that? And Julia, you want to chime in with any thoughts?
All right. Sounds good. First, I just want to say, oh my gosh, there are so many parts to the school report. And as a student or parent, you don't really have to think about any of them because your counselor is taking care of all of it. So it probably sounded a little bit overwhelming, but this is what your counselor does. And God bless your counselor for dealing with all this stuff. So when I'm reading the school report, the first thing that I see is who the counselor is, and it lists their email address and their phone number. And I actually use their email address from time to time. I will reach out to ask for mid-semester grades or something if I need more information about a student. And then we get down to there's the school profile that Susan was talking about that's created by your school, and it's a separate PDF, and I love getting that. But there's also a section of the school report that's the school profile. So that's what I see next. And this is something that your counselor fills out once, I would imagine, and then that information is just filled in and sort of appears when I'm reading the school profile. So it tells us how big your graduating class is, and usually it tells us the percent who are going to college to 4-year versus 2-year, which is really helpful for understanding the class that you're coming from. It gives us, sometimes, it depends on the school, the percentage of students of color at your school, so that, again, we have more of an idea, like if this is a school in my territory in Durango, right, there's going to be a big percentage of Native American students, and it's helpful for me to have that context when I'm reading. And then it gives us the setting. Are you urban, suburban, rural? It tells us, this is a part that I really use, the curriculum. And it tells us if you're an AP school or an IB school, it tells us how many, for example, with an AP school, how many AP classes are offered, and then what's the limit. So like I'm looking at an example right now that I pulled up. This is a rural school in Vermont called Hazen Union School, and they offer 7 APs at their school, and the limit is 4. That's so nice for me to be able to see when I'm reading a student and I see, okay, this student has 4 APs. That's like actually a lot for a rural school, but much less than what we often see at suburban or urban schools. But it's really easy for me to contextualize that by looking at the curriculum section of the school profile. And then
Hey, Hillary, can I stop
Yeah.
you for a sec? Just in case someone's not following, talk about what that contextualization would mean and how it would influence like an academic reader rating with you having that knowledge.
Yeah. So we are looking for students who have taken advantage of the opportunities available to them at their school. And we need to see success in enough rigorous classes to know that the student can be successful here when they come to CC. And so if a school, like to us, success looks like A's in maybe 5 or 6 or even 7 advanced classes at your school. That could be AP or IB or whatever, or other kinds of advanced classes. And so I need to know what the context is for your school in order to sort of judge that accurately. I'm not going to expect a student whose school offers no advanced classes to have taken 5 advanced classes, right? That's crazy. And so being able to see what the curriculum is on the school report, where it's not buried in a narrative, and it's not like I don't have to go read every word of a counselor evaluation to figure it out, but I can just see very plainly what's offered and what the limits are. That helps me to understand if the student has taken advantage of what's available at their school. And I always tell students this, like, I'm going to see if your school offers 21 AP classes, and I don't think that you should take 21 AP classes. I think that would be loony. So like there are, this is giving us an understanding of how much is offered at your school, but it's not raising the expectation, to a level that you can't meet in terms of like having the most rigorous curriculum. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. I was listening to a former counselor at 2 highly selective schools say, "Oh my goodness, I regret how many times I went around telling people that you have to have the most demanding curriculum in every single subject.
Yeah.
And now that I'm on the counseling side, like what kind of angst was I creating?"
Yeah. Yeah. I sometimes, when I'm giving info sessions, when I'm feeling feisty, will tell a joke. I'm not a very jokey person, but sometimes I'll be explaining this rigor situation, and I'll say, if your school offers 25 APs, I expect you to take 25 APs, and everyone's jaws drop. And I'm like, I'm just kidding, you guys. That's crazy. Why would I expect that from you? Because it is like, but I think that there is sort of a mindset of like, I have to take every single rigorous class or I'm not going to get into college. And you're like, come on, guys, we all know that that's not true. Plus, I think I learned it on your podcast a long time ago, Mark, about the study at UNC. This was probably like 10 or 15 years ago, right? Where they said
No,
there's
it's
a
less
point.
than that. But yeah, it's maybe like 5 or 6 years ago.
Okay.
Yeah.
But there's a point of diminishing returns. And once you get to, I think their number was 6 or 7 advanced
5.
classes.
5.
Was it 5? Okay.
Yeah.
Once you get to 5 advanced classes, you, as the reader, enough to be able to predict a student's success at your school. You don't need more than 5. And so I always have that in my mind when I'm reading. And you can get to the most rigorous rating in our reader review with 5 advanced classes. So
The only
that's good
thing we
to
need
know.
to say is that is very school specific advice there, because even Duke had come back with something a little different. And so, yeah.
You can imagine as the pool of applicants gets
Mhm.
more competitive, that goes up. But I can't imagine anyone thinking that you have to take all of the advanced classes at your school. Plus, you couldn't, because there's not time if you go to a school.
Well, they're
with
also
lots of
trying
advanced
to
classes.
help with mental health and getting people off the treadmill and all that.
Yeah,
So
for
we
sure.
haven't heard from Julia yet. Julia, what do you want to say about when you're reading and how you use the school report and some of the things that you find, are very influential in your reader ratings?
Yeah, a lot of what Hillary said,
Mhm.
absolutely. And a lot what Susan was saying too is I'm thinking particularly when a lot of my College Horizon students come from high schools that maybe they have like a one-page profile or something. So it is so helpful to me when we're actually going through the process together where I can see how their counselor answers. Probably, especially for me as a reader, those questions that Hillary was talking about in terms of demographics, I pay, especially as someone who used to read specifically for first gen and BIPOC students, I pay a lot attention to what percentage of students go on to a 4-year college and what percentage of graduating students go on to a 2-year college. And I'm thinking when I used to read like LA Unified, right? This is like, 15 years ago, but I would regularly have students applying from high schools that sent maybe 4% to a 4-year and 2% to a 2-year, right? So that meant the vast majority are not going on to higher education, which very much reflects what my ratings might be about the strength of that student. I did not expect that student to have. A lot of the time, they took a lot of AP courses, but barely broke ones and twos on the APs, right? And that was really common. That was most of the students, right? And this information I would get from the school report form, just because a lot of the time you're talking about guidance counselors that have maybe 250 kids, and as much as college is really helpful for low income folks, there's probably a lot of other things going on in these high schools that the guidance counselor is attending to, that is probably really urgent. So I just always found the demographic section to be really helpful. And also, and please know this, and I see it from both sides. There's other sections that we talked about, like there's a rating section where the counselor can say, I rank not only just the curriculum strength, but I rank this student compared to others in terms of like achievements, things like that. That is not a required portion. So you'll also find that as a reader, you can be looking at a school report form from a high school that doesn't answer half of the questions, but they answer the ones that are really helpful. Or you'll have a high school where some of the counselors filling out that form answer those questions, some don't, right? But please know too, as one of those people who prepares these forms and sends them, that nothing goes that isn't required on the school report form or that wouldn't give a admission officer a much better contextual understanding. And sometimes I'll say this too, and I'm sure Hillary and Susan come across this, is um, I will sometimes double check the school report form, even if I do have a good school profile or a decent school profile, just because they might say, to Hillary's example about the APs, they might say 4 is the limit, but I'm like, oh, but does that mean like what's the like overall or how many years or special permission? And oftentimes there's also a section within the school report form that's optional, but a counselor can write down any disruptions to your school, like for example, if you were, affected by hurricanes, but they can also say like, due to our scheduling conflict, this student could not take the full IB program or something. So I do think the context in the form is probably the most helpful thing to me as a reader.
Friends, this concludes this part of our roundtable discussion. We hope you join us next week for the next part. All right, friends, let's transition to the final part of my interview with Dr. Ramon Blakley, UT Austin.
And now it's time for our college spotlight of the week.
Friends, Raymond and I have a robust conversation about the political climate at UT. Raymond talks about the great honors programs at UT. He talks about some brand new majors UT is offering, and Raymond's really excited about, and he talks about what UT is doing to be a national leader when it comes to robotics and AI. And of course, we end with Raymond on the hot seat in our lightning round. Listen and enjoy. So I want to ask you this question, but I don't want you to get in trouble. And I know you'll answer it to the best that you can.
Sure.
Texas is in the news a lot for being sort of the politicians sort of curtailing some of your institutional freedom. It's not only happening at your school; it's kind of a nationwide thing. But Texas has been first. There was all the disbanding of DEI, and I've been following all that. Right? It's a question that I get asked a lot.
Sure.
Because that's sort of the public face to a lot of people that are out of state, is whatever the governor may be doing. Like, and I'll get this: no Florida, no Texas. When there are places that are, this tends to come from people that may be a little bit more liberal politically.
Yeah.
And what can you say or not say about how the institution is being forced to have to change because of political pressures?
Yeah, I mean, well, first of all, let me say this. If I wasn't prepared to answer this question, I probably should not be doing what I'm doing, right? I mean, it is certainly something that impacts us various ways. But there's a simple response that I would give, and that is that, and I think you indicated that there's a lot of changes happening nationwide. We're not in a microcosm here at the university, and so we certainly still have a dedication and a commitment to serving students, no matter where they come from, and we're going to continue to do that. Students are continuing to find UT Austin as a valuable place. All of the key performance indicators that I've spoken to, when you disaggregate that and look at, how individual communities are doing here at the institution, they're excelling when compared to peers in other areas. And so you've got a great set of folks here that care about students. And, I think even with all the changes, there is still a group of folks here that want to see the very best out of everyone. And so, I certainly respect that when you're outside of Texas and you are, some folks may be in a what I call I don't want to offend anyone, but some people may be in an echo chamber and they're just hearing only a certain message about Texas. I love Texas. I love it here. I'm not from Texas originally, but I like to say I got here as soon as I could. And there's a lot of great innovation happening here on this campus. And our students are supported. Our students are successful. And I hate for folks to miss out on that, but I completely understand that there's so many options that are available to them throughout the country. But we certainly want to be in that conversation. So if a student that you're working with, or anyone, if they're wanting to really see if what I'm saying is real, then I challenge them to visit campus. Come and experience what you've experienced. Come to the city.
It's really pretty too. Campus is pretty.
Eat the food and talk to people. And everything that you see or hear isn't exactly what it's called out to be. And of course, we are in a place where, we choose to be here. We love this place. And so I think it's important to make note of that and not necessarily, miss the opportunity to explore one of the greatest institutions in the country.
When you see like mock elections from your students,
yeah,
what do the voting patterns look like? Have you seen anything like that amongst the students?
I really haven't paid much attention to that or seen that, but I would say that our students are across the spectrum. I was just having this conversation the other day I think it's so cool to have so many different perspectives represented in our classroom and in the university life, because I think that's where we get to, solutions that we can work out can work on together. And so I guess the anthem is probably nationwide and not just here, but that you got one group that's going against another group, and we're all at odds with one another. But I think this is a place where we value conversation and discourse, and we are engaged in that, and we have various ways of thinking. I think that makes us stronger. I don't know. I could be
because the perception within Texas is A&M is very conservative, Baylor is very conservative, TCU leans conservative, SMU leans conservative, and then there's Austin, and Austin as a city tends to be more progressive, and within the Texas context is perceived as more liberal. Same for Trinity College on the liberal arts side.
Sure.
That's the perception.
Yeah.
And there's a person out there that would make them consider it, and there's a person out there that would make them not consider it, and there's a person out there that couldn't care less because they know it's not 99.1, and there's a mixture of all types.
Yeah.
But do you feel there's any truth to that within the context of Texas? And that doesn't mean that you don't have large swaths of all political stripes represented, but do you feel that that's a fair statement?
I don't.
Mm-hmm.
I don't.
No.
I think there's something for everyone here, and I don't, and I wouldn't say that about my, our, I wouldn't call them our sister schools, but our friends at the other institutions that you've named. I think that's actually where we end up, making the mistake of painting with a broad brush.
Mm-hmm.
And so,
and I was talking more student body because I know like the leadership and admissions is a lot of times buy into the concept that we want all different voices here so people can learn from people who are different. Like, I think that's pretty much universal within admission offices, right?
Sure. Yeah.
Yeah. That's okay. We'll get off
Man,
that.
hard hitting questions there.
I don't, you know how I am, man.
I don't know, but I don't know what to tell you other than my own experiences.
It's all good.
I think
I try to go beyond the marketing.
No. And I'm not trying to give you marketing either. I mean, I really mean what I say, because I think that is a part of the problem. I think that's actually the problem is, and so I always
meaning the labeling or the marketing or
the
both,
labeling.
Okay.
The labeling, and to some extent the marketing, right? So if marketing is not honest about what's happening, then that can be problematic as well. But I'm not giving you marketing. I'm giving you what I feel. Listen, I'm a Texas X, man. So, I don't have to be that. Sure. You know what I mean? And I wouldn't be if I didn't feel that what I'm sharing with you is 100% factual.
Raymond, I'm about to wind down here, but we always end with our what we call our lightning round. But before we get to that, is there anything about Texas I haven't asked you that you just kind of want to share with?
You haven't asked me anything about barbecue.
and
actually, I appreciate that.
Why? Because you get that question all the time. Well, I learned something on my trip. There's like the chain barbecue, and then there's like the gourmet stuff. You know, absolutely. And I got treated by a family I work with to the gourmet stuff, and the gourmet stuff is next level.
Yeah, very good.
Yeah, it's some good stuff. Yeah. Anything else about UT that you haven't shared that you would want our listeners?
No, I mean, I think the other part that I would probably think about is I'd love for students to consider one of our many honors programs. And we've got some really, really great honors programs. Everybody knows about, maybe has heard about Plan 2 or the Liberal Arts Honors Program or Polymathic Scholars or the Turing Scholars for those.
Why don't you say a word about that? Because not everybody has heard about all of that.
Yeah, I mean, there's just, I don't want to talk up one more than the other. So this is actually marketing. But I think if students were to navigate to our page and just look at the different honors opportunities, which are opportunities to basically engage with smaller communities in coursework, sometimes living arrangements, sometimes with scholarship opportunities, to really not only gain a great education, but also, really challenge themselves, set themselves up for greater opportunities beyond the undergraduate degree. The honors programs here are phenomenal. And I'm really speaking that because I just left a presentation with the honors programs, and I just continue to be amazed by some of the wonderful things our students are doing. So I'm going to leave it at that, because if I start talking about one of them, I'm going to forget another one. But really, really log on to and search UT Austin's honors programs, and you will see all the wonderful things that we have going on here. The other thing I'll make note of is that there's a few new majors that we have here. One of them is the public affairs majors. This is within the LBJ school. brand new major, actually just starting this fall. Had a tremendous amount of interest. You all know that you know this, that we do have the LBJ presidential libraries on our campus. So students are able to really explore public affairs at the undergraduate level. For many years, they only offered graduate degrees. And so now we're excited about that. We've got a new major in civic honors. We've got some computer science specialty programs where students can study computer science and a major within liberal arts. We call it the X plus CS, could be history plus computer science, and so on and so forth. So lots of great opportunities. Always looking at how we can expand and respond to what's needed. And the last thing I'll talk about our robotics program, which is an honors program in robotics. Listen, if you're in Austin, you're going to see robots. If you're here for a good 48-hour period and you're around the downtown area, you're going to see robot cars. You're going to see robots delivering lunch. In fact, just down the way is a I don't want to do a commercial for Chick-fil-A, but I love Chick-fil-A. Maybe some of my time being in Georgia, but
Yeah.
I could order lunch and a robot delivers Chick-fil-A to my building, right? So, but the idea about robotics and how we interact with robots, we're trying to be a leader in that within not only the state of Texas and also AI. So all great things for students to consider. But of course, you didn't ask about barbecue, so we
I will say this. I met with multiple students in Canfield, and they really sang the praises of Canfield.
Oh,
and
yeah.
just what the
fantastic.
Canfield experience was like, that made it special. So I did hear that feedback from students as well, especially about Canfield. But it just happened that I was meeting more Canfield students than some of the other honors programs. Yeah, that's the business honors program, if listeners aren't familiar with Canfield. So, lighthearted round. If you couldn't be in education, what other field would be appealing to you?
If I be in education, I'd be a professional singer-songwriter.
Oh, that means you have to sing on the side. I didn't know about this.
I got a little skills. I do a little something.
Nice. Never you broke out any album or anything like that, or
No,
anything?
no.
Just more like the shower singing, kind of on more on that level. Any choirs, church choirs?
Yeah.
Solos.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
I learned something about you.
Yeah.
Stuff. What's your favorite?
There might be video out there on YouTube somewhere.
Oh, now I'm going there. There we go. What's your favorite gospel song?
Oh man, my favorite gospel song. I think there's so
or
many.
Singer, maybe group if that's easier than song.
Probably anything Fred Hammond.
Oh yeah, he's got some
anything
good
by
stuff.
Fred Hammond. Yeah.
Love
it.
Yeah. Good stuff. What's on the bucket list?
This is for life.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm trying to get to South Africa.
Nice.
And so looking forward to planning a trip there. I think that's the, I think also I would love to learn to fly in some capacity. So whether it's helicopters, hang gliding, I want to fly in some way. So that's kind of a bucket list item. I want to do it safely, though. I want to live afterwards. So
sure, of course. You don't know this because this is a new development since we last spoke, but my youngest daughter works at UNC Chapel Hill with Keenan Flagler Business School, and she gets to do an international trip every year with the students that do their international study abroad. It's like her, one other person, and then a traveling professor. And she called me 3 days ago, just beaming. I knew it was good news. She got approved for South Africa for next
fantastic.
year. Yeah. She did Thailand this year for 2 weeks.
Yeah.
And so it's amazing the opportunities that you can get in education. Yeah.
Absolutely.
What do you wish your 18-year-old self knew?
Man, I wish I knew that this was a job. I probably would have started working in the Office of Admissions, as a tour guide. Many of my colleagues did come up that way, working as tour guides and working in the office. But I was a student government nerd. What else did I do? Oh, I also worked in disability support services. So I was leaning towards in student activities, but I never knew that enrollment management or admissions, I didn't even know that that was a thing. And so
That's a
it's
guy who loves
something.
his job. When he's been doing it 28 years, and
Yeah.
then he gives you an answer like that. That's a
No,
guy who loves
I
his
do
job.
love it,
Yeah.
man. I think it would have
Yeah.
been great to give tours. Like
Hmm.
I wish I would have. I could see myself as as an 18-year-old giving a tour of a campus or something. Yeah.
Last question, Raymond.
Yeah.
What's your advice for our listeners, which are
Sure.
parents, college counselors, and students?
Yeah.
What's your advice to them?
The biggest piece of advice that I always would give, and that is, um, you know, number one, remember that this is your process. So own the process, ask the questions, be present in the process. Make sure that you don't leave any stone unturned in this college search. And it's not always about what your parents want. Family's important, and obviously you're going to be partnering in that regard. But there's also the fact that there's a real tug that a student might feel in a specific way. So being able to communicate that and for that to be respected as well and supported is very important. The other piece that I would ask is, or that I would add is, it's okay not to get it right. I mean, we have transfer admissions for a reason, right? So, don't give it the amount of energy that it needs, but it's okay to not get it right. You're listening to a transfer student,
There you go.
I've been through that process. And so I know what that's like, and hey, it's fine. And I do value all the experiences that I've had for sure. And then last but not least, I'll say this, and that is, you've got a lot of great people that are pulling for you, sages, if you would, that are in this work, be it your school counselor, or other counselors or the admission counselor on this side. These they're people, and of course, like you, Mark, who have spent a great deal of their life, working with students and have seen success through the years and helping students find great fits. Don't take it for granted, the advice that you get from these sages.
Raymond, you have been most generous with your time, giving us more than an hour and 15 minutes. It's really great to connect with you again. I'm trying to see when I'm going to see you next.
I'm actually thinking about that right now.
Columbus this
We
year,
only
maybe?
have so much money in terms of professional development, so I'm actually thinking about, if this is going to be a year where I don't make NACAC, but I'm always at NACAC. I haven't missed many of them, but yes, certainly we'll be out and about. But there's chances I probably will be in Columbus this year. And for those that don't know, NACAC is the National Association for College Admission Counseling. It is the place where all the folks that do what we do come together on an annual basis. Not
7,000.
all of them, but a good bit of them. So it's a great organization, and I have the privilege of serving on the board of directors for that organization from 2016 through 2019. So, but there's a conference happening in Columbus, and maybe I'll make it. We'll see. I certainly love the work that they're doing, and I hope I get to see you there, man.
I'll connect with you offline and see if we can connect. It's 2019 is a little bit long. 6 years, man. Been 6 years.
You've been gone since you haven't gone.
No, since I last saw you and we were at Harvard for a week. That was 2019. Yeah, it was just the year before COVID.
That's true.
And so it's been a little bit too long. So we'll connect, if not at NACAC, somewhere else, man. But I really appreciate you, my friend.
Keep doing what you're doing.
Thank you. Same to you. Today's episode. You asked for roundtables. Well, you're getting them back to back. One today and another one on Monday. And this is a different one, though. What we've done is put together a panel of parents who in some ways are very different, but in some ways are the same. We've got parents from the West Coast, East Coast, South. We've got men and women. We've got different races. We've got socioeconomic diversity, but they all share one thing in common. They're concerned about the pressure their student is under to go to Brand Name U and the impact it has on their mental health. So I've asked Lisa to conduct this so she can utilize her skills as both a psychologist and a college counselor. And I'm devoting the whole entire episode to this. I don't want to distract from the power of this by even having a question from a listener or me doing a soliloquy. I just want you to hear the parents in their own voices and That's what you're going to hear. You'll hear part 1 and 2 on Monday, and then you'll hear the final part the final Monday. And friends, I always tell you, I'm always learning from my students. I was working with a student this week who goes to the Stanford Online School. I was helping her with her essay, and she had a really powerful quote. It's one from Martin Luther King. It's one I've heard before, but I haven't heard in a while. But I want to close with it because I feel it's one of these quotes that all of us can apply to some area of our lives. So this is the quote. If you can't fly, then run. If you can't run, then walk. If you can't walk, then crawl. But whatever you do, you have to keep moving. See you on Monday, friends. And that's our show. Big thank you to you, our listeners, for tuning in this week. If you find this podcast helpful, please follow us and you will get every single episode as soon as they are released. If you want to support our podcast, you can click the share button and send it to your friends and acquaintances. You can say positive things about your college-bound kid on your social media feed. And you can help us stay commercial-free and pay our staff by donating on the yourcollegeboundkid.website. You can write a review for us on Apple or Spotify. And if you have a question or a recommendation, just go to speakpipe.com/YCBK, hit the orange button, and speak. We will do our best to get your question in your own voice on an upcoming episode. I am the producer of the podcast, and I live in Metro Atlanta. We have a fantastic team that has over 200 years of admissions and counseling experience. Shout out to our co-hosts, Dr. Lisa Ruff in North Carolina, Susan Tree in Pennsylvania, Vince Garcia in California, Julia Escobar in Massachusetts, Linda Depker in Missouri, Andy Strickler, the Chief Enrollment Officer at Connecticut College, New London, Connecticut, Hillary Dickman, an Admission Officer at Colorado College in Colorado Springs, and our International Admissions Expert, Kevin Newton in Dallas, Texas. Our sensational sound engineer is Nemanja Motvich. Our amazing music is from Victor Allen Weeks. Marketing designs from Kimberly Bloss. Our reliable webmaster is Stalionis Dimitru. Website updates are done by Joyce Stucker. Our image editor is Vlad Honchar. If you want to have a coaching session with me, just text me at 404-664-4340. If you want to reach someone else on our team, all of our bios with contact info can be found at yourcollegeboundkid.com under the About YCBK tab. If you want to get our free monthly YCBK newsletter, YCBK Plus, it is also under the About YCBK tab. If you want to see our recommended books and websites, they are on our website under the Resources tab. While you're on our website, check out our hundreds of interviews in their entirety. Check out our college spotlights, our blog, and our upcoming events. We think of you as our listening family, and we look forward to meeting with you every single Monday and every single Thursday.